Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again. This week, by request, X-Japan's Art of Life, their epic 29-minute album and song, back from 1993, almost 31 years to the day when that album came out on August 25th, 1993. But before we talk about all things X-Japan, how are you, my friend?
I am great. Yeah, this was a really fun thing to listen to, and we're going to do something a little bit different this week, which I think should be fun for everybody involved. We're going to do a listen along, and so we're going to play the album or song or both and discuss it as it goes on, and we invite you to play the album along with us. We'll cue you in on when to start, but being that it's kind of a shorter than usual album and it's only one song, we thought it would be kind of cool to do that. But yeah, other than that, I've just been kind of just winding down the days, 3 more days until a nice 10-day vacation for me. So I am looking forward to all that. So lots of good stuff going down.
Yeah, and business is starting to pick up on the music end too. Lots of stuff coming out. I'm still making my way through it. I thought the new Simone Simons album was really good. It's what you expect given the participants, but when you mix Arjun's songwriting with Simone's vocals, you get something that's really good. Except I thought the songwriting was really inspired, and I thought it just kind of complemented her voice exceptionally well. So that was definitely an album I'm going to go back to more than once. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And a band out of Sweden, which we've not talked about, called Thermality, just came out with their new album, The Final Hours. Kind of straight up melodic death metal in the style of like a Dark Tranquillity or an Insomnium, something like that. And I just thought it was really well done. I don't know that it was like my album of the year or anything like that, but just a really solid release in that genre if you're into that sort of stuff. And I would highly recommend that people check that out this week. Did anything catch your ear before we talk about some X-Japan?
Yeah, I wanted to mention our friend Dave, who's a member of our Patreon and a longtime listener, sent us over a clip from his band. And I'll be honest with you, like I wouldn't plug this just because he asked. I'm plugging this because I actually enjoyed what he sent. His band is called Fourth Dominion, and they're based out of upstate New York. And they have a new album called Diana's Day. It came out on August 1st. And I checked out the music video for the song Lilum. And it's for like an indie band, like I'm assuming on a pretty minimal budget. I thought they made a really cool music video. The music was really interesting. The bass playing reminded me a lot of The Police and Sting. The sound in general kind of, I think we both agreed, had kind of like a Typo Negative kind of feel. It's this just kind of like dark gothic. It's really different, unlike anything I've heard. And so I wanted to throw that out there. Dave Milburn is the guitar player along with Aldi Prianto, Brady Mentz on drums, and Meta Wyand is the vocalist, bassist, guitarist, composition, lyrics design. So definitely recommend giving this a shot. It's definitely something different, but I thought it was kind of cool. So I'll also throw this track on one of my next playlists whenever that one kind of makes its way through. But I did want to make a comment on that.
Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. I don't know that I can really compare it to much else. I think in many ways you did about as good a job as possible because it just sounds very different. But I'll post the track this week so people get a chance to hear it. I think that if you go into it and you don't expect Halloween and you expect more something in the Typo Negative vein or something like that, I think you're in for a nice surprise. So that is that. And obviously lots to talk about here, but this request comes from one of our Patreon members, Adam Askoff. He wanted us to cover The Art of Life. As we said, it had come out August 25th, 1993. So 31 years almost to the day that this podcast is coming out. So without further ado, you want to kind of jump into it? I'll count this in, and then we can both hit play.
Yes. Is there anything you want to say introductory-wise before we
Yeah,
get started?
I'll say this, and I'll kind of weave some stuff in. This, in many ways, is that their classic lineup. It's their fourth studio album. It's really just a 29-minute song or album by the same name. It's Toshi on vocals, Pada and Hide on guitars, Heath on bass, and Yoshiki on drums and piano and the like. And Yoshiki was really the mastermind behind this entire production. And I'll call it production because it is a lot of meat on the bone, even though it's one short album. So I think that kind of sets the stage. And as we get into the music, I'm sure we'll get into some of the inspiration behind this and some of the comparisons to other songs and whatnot, because obviously some of those come to mind immediately, I think, when you listen to this.
You've seen this band live, correct?
Yes, I have.
Did they play this song when you saw them?
They played the second movement, we'll call it. So
Okay.
I'll get when we get into the track itself, I'll explain which portion they played. But it was awesome, and this was my first exposure to the band, and we had covered Blue Blood in the archives, and that was a really interesting release in many ways. But I actually prefer this. I think this is their magnum opus, if you will. I just thought that this song is so interesting, and every time I hear it, I just pick up on different elements. But again, I'll get into that momentarily.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so with that, I'm going to count us in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. And again, I was kind of just mentioning how this starts off with orchestration and keys for like the first minute 15 before the vocals kick in. What were your immediate thoughts when you were listening to this, and had you heard it before?
I definitely have heard it before. So like there were parts of it that were definitely familiar to me. But this is, I think, the first time I really like went back and listened to it a bunch of times and really kind of got a feel for it. And it's just a really incredible production. Just, all the way through it. There's so many parts that are so distinct, and so like it's interesting. I wanted to look and see if they had like ever broken it up like officially into parts. Like how sometimes it'll be like, yeah, it's one song, but then it'll be like, unofficially, here's part 1, here's part 2, here's part 3. I wasn't able to find anything to that nature, but man, there's just so much going on with this, and obviously, like as you said, it starts out very symphonically. It looks like this was recorded with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, so that's kind of a big deal right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, they really spared no expense, and the whole thing is sung in English, and by this point, the vocals have kind of kicked in. It's really emotional, and I think it's. I don't know. It's I don't think you realize just without looking at the lyrics, like how sad and inspiring this kind of is. But it's really just this dark, dreary passage where somebody's looking death straight in the eye and wondering whether or not they should continue with their life. And even though some of the melodies continue throughout the song, the lyrics change dramatically as we get towards the end. And it's almost a buildup of, the art of life. And I found that to be exceptionally not only interesting, but, almost like the hook that kind of kept me going to find out like what's going to happen during the course of this story.
I'm going to defer to you on the lyrical portion of things, because I didn't really get too deep into that. But I will say this. I don't think I've ever heard a metal vocalist who sounded as much like Steve Perry as Toshi does. It really reminds me a lot of Steve Perry and makes me wonder what Steve Perry would have sounded like in a metal band. And it's
this might have been it.
I really love his vocals. It's really unlike a lot of other bands that you would hear. I can't remember if I made that comparison when we talked about them previously. I may have, but that's really like the first thing that popped into my head as soon as the vocal lines started. And as you can hear right now we're getting into like the guitars and the drums and stuff, and it's starting to pick up more of the heavier portions after that 3 or so minute orchestral symphonic type intro.
Yeah, and what immediately jumped out to me at this point was just how good the production was on this. For an album that's 31 years old, every instrument is clear and distinct, and it doesn't have a very muddied sound. It's a very clear, crisp sound, even to this day. And by the time we get to the 3:30 mark, the song takes off like a rocket ship, almost like a power metal band, and really kind of more Halloween and less glam, which obviously they were known for the blend of both styles. The bass line, especially around the 3:45, 4-minute mark, it screams Marcus Grosskopf from Halloween. And it was so prominent in the mix that I found it to be a pleasure, because not every band lets the bass player shine, but here it comes through loud and clear.
Well put, yeah. I think that there's definitely a lot of progressive elements, I think, on this song, but right here, like, you're hearing, I think, a very power metal style here. I thought that the Halloween comparison is pretty apt, I think, at least for the guitars and bass, like you said, and the double bass drum and everything. It's really fast moving. It has that what's the word we use here?
Gallop.
Trot. What's that? The gallop. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got my horse movements mixed up.
Keep trotting.
Yeah, keep trotting. We're kind of starting things out with like a nice gate. This is one of my favorite parts of the song, actually. Just
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah, it's just very akin to what I enjoy listening to, and it does a really nice job at bouncing back and forth between like lyrical passages and solos. And I mean, you kind of have to when you have a song this long. But I don't know if you'd call it the chorus that, like, right about here where the vocals start to soar. Oh, I love this part so much.
So this from about 3:30 through this part up until the next big instrumental section at about 9:45. For that 6 minutes, that's the section they played. They played this at Madison Square Garden when I saw them, and I still can't believe A, that I saw them, and B, that I saw them at Madison Square Garden of all places. But it was this I would say is the closest thing to a chorus on the album, because it does repeat itself over and over. But again, it's the lyrics which change. So it really adds a different dimension, because you go from the darkest of despair to kind of like a hope and promise to the end where it's completely transformed the person's life. And now he's, living a fruitful life and he's in love and all that stuff. It's just that every time the chorus repeats, there's different layers that are added in, whether it's symphonic elements or solos on top. And I think that it's just so artfully crafted that it is few songs or few songwriters spend the time to really add those kind of layers, especially over a 29-minute track. But this is definitely one of the highlights, this second portion of the song.
Yeah, clearly the song was aptly named because it is very like an art form here, and kind of going through the art of life. It's really kind of cool. Reminds me a lot of Rush in terms of, like, with 2112, they play a portion of it live, just probably the part that most people really enjoy, like the most catchy, earwormy part of the song. So I guess that's similar to what they do here. Rather, I guess they spared the audience the 4 minutes of smashing the head on the piano part, which we'll get to, which is very, I realize that it's like part of the story, but it's actually kind of almost difficult to listen to because of all the dissonance and everything that's going on. But we'll get to that when we get to that. But we're just continuing on with just these like fast riffs and like lovely. The vocals are so good. I love how unique that they are. Because, we've heard so many of the power metal greats in our 200 plus episodes. And this is just like totally a similar sound instrumentally, but with different vocal style. And, then you tack on the symphony above it all. And it's really just such an epic production all the way around, and this is such a perfect part that encapsulates that description, in my opinion.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that. This song was actually supposed to be released on Jealousy, their third album, as part of the album, but in short, the band was just not happy with the state of the song at that point. So because of that, desire for this to be absolutely perfect, especially with the vocal lines, they just kind of put it to the side and then released it as its own album. It's just about 2 years later. So, it reminds me in many ways of the parallels with A Change of Seasons, which again was written during Images and Words, supposed to be on that disc, but then shelved for, 3 or 4 years until they released it as a standalone EP. And the song had changed quite a bit by that point.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Did you happen to read what Yoshiki had said about like the writing the song, saying I think I tried to convince even myself not to die. I try to keep going. It's a very positive message, I think, because I was very suicidal. I just hated life a lot of times. That's also the message for people, also myself as well. I had to convince myself to keep going. Then I wrote the song. So like that is a really heavy and deep inspiration for this. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 of the members on this album have passed away since this was released, correct?
Yes, including the bass player who passed away last year, if I'm not mistaken, which is really sad. But as we kind of talk, the climax of part 2 is kind of coming to a head here, and we're getting into one of the better guitar solos on the album, which leads into kind of a very lengthy, almost like a 4-minute instrumental section with layered guitars, heavy orchestration, and arguably even picks up more speed. I remember hearing it this week, and for the first time, I said to myself, this actually gives me a Dragon Force vibe just because of the speed at which they're playing with the dual guitars, right? Like there was the layered guitars. This is a really nice part of the song and clearly classically inspired. That much I think was very evident to me. And going back and kind of like looking at what this was, apparently this was, at least in part, inspired by Schubert's Unfinished Symphony. So it obviously makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, this section here reminds me a lot of Angra, like Angra, like Angels Cry, kind of that era where they, I think, were a little bit more into the like faster power metal mixed with the symphonic elements. So I'm definitely picking up that right here, but just really epic, sweeping passages. It's really just an impressive piece of music, and I'm probably going to say that 9 more times as we go on. But I mean, it's. I'm so glad that Adam chose this. He had initially, I think, had chosen something else, and then he kind of called it an audible on his own request. And so he actually just messaged me, and just he doesn't really have a ton that he wants to add, but he just said that that there's 2 really great live versions on YouTube that are both worth seeing.
Yes,
and seeing them perform it live is really what got him into the album, and I think made it like an all-timer for him. I'm
so glad that he mentioned that. I was going to talk about this, that this song has not been played live many times in its entirety. And to your point, like 2112, they play it, parts of it, but they don't usually play the whole thing. But around the time that the album came out, they did a number of shows, and I'm actually posting it this week so that people can see one of the live versions from, I think, New Year's Eve, 1993. And it's just this epic performance. And to take the whole thing in, the whole 30-minute epic with the video and a lot of what this band does is the visual elements. And I think that when you add that to the music, it's honestly unlike anything I've ever seen or heard together. So that's about the biggest compliment I can give it, because I think the song kicks ass. It's
incredibly impressive to me that how big that this band got, like,
massive.
Both in Japan and here in the States and everywhere else. But like, it's interesting because it's like we listen to so much stuff, and it's like so many things just don't crack into the mainstream. And like, I remember when you told me that this is a band that can sell out Madison Square Garden, I was like, that's wild. That's just so wild to me. Like, I don't know that Dream Theater could sell out Madison Square Garden. So like,
yeah, I mean, last time they played there, they opened for Iron Maiden, so that should tell you everything you need to know right there. I want you to pay careful attention to this guitar solo right here. this piece, everything kind of quiets down, and it just gets into this like orchestration piece, which just to me screams Final Fantasy. Like I feel like this was something that Nobuo Uematsu would have penned for one of those games later on in the anthology, like 7, 8, somewhere in that area.
I definitely got a lot of video game soundtrack vibes throughout this experience. So yeah, that makes complete sense, especially like you said right here where the violin comes in really prominently. And what's up with the like whispering that goes on?
That I'm not sure about. Obviously, they had somebody as a guest spot do spoken word parts, but what's interesting here is the entire band drops out and it's just full on orchestration with this spoken word section until it goes back into that, dare I say, the chorus again, although I don't really think it's a chorus per se, but it's interesting because like it's just they weave this section in and out so many times, but again the lyrics change every time they do it. So it's a journey, and I think that I would encourage not only you, but anyone that's listening to this to do it with the lyrics next to them, because I think it adds an extra element to what this is.
I've seen a lot of comparisons. Like I've seen this band compared to Queen. There's a quote saying that this is Japan's Stairway to Heaven. There's comparisons to Dream Theater's A Change of Seasons, and there was a quote from Nick Butler from Sputnik Music, who gave the album a 5 out of 5, and he said that compared to Change of Seasons, Art of Life is more emotional, diverse, intense, impressive, and epic, and that Japan X's members are more technically skilled at their instruments. I
don't know that I agree with that, but that is, you definitely got my attention with that.
Now, mind you, he finished by praising the track as, quote, undoubtedly the best song I have ever heard. So clearly he was a fan.
It's great, but A Change of Seasons for me, as we covered in one of the bonus episodes, is as good as it gets. But now that we're in about the 15 or so minute mark, and for those following along, we're at 15:40, sit back and get ready for one of the most interesting 8-minute piano solos. And it starts off beautiful, melodic, almost just there's something so simplistic about it, but it's just so beautiful. And it's begins to build and build and build. It's almost like multiple solos in one, something that Jordan Rudess would have just been so proud of. And then after about 3 minutes, it's like a complete descent into utter madness and chaos. I mean, that is just the best way I can describe it. But I've got 8 minutes to filibuster while this thing continues. But kidding aside, like, what was your reaction to the beginning of the solo and then kind of like where it goes in the middle? Because this is bonkers, dude.
Yeah, descent into madness is pretty much the perfect way to describe it. It's really beautiful. Then it gets like really intense, like right here, and then through like the use of like dissonance, it's almost like they're purposely trying to make you cringe a little bit. Like, and I think that's part of the storytelling. And like there was just an unfortunate point where my girlfriend walked into the room during the like absolute peak of the madness of the piano, and she was like, "Are they playing like this on purpose?" And so, I guess it's kind of hard to, without the scope. I'll make sure that she listens to the episode so she understands everything in the full scope of things. But it was just so funny that she just like walked in and was just like, "Oh my God, this is." Can you imagine just walking into a room and like imagine walking to a waiting room, going to the dentist, and that's playing?
God.
I think I gotta go.
It's like Isaac Yankem's office. This is nuts. But. And again, you're 2 minutes into the solo at this point, and it's still very melodic. Did you, when things start to go off the rails, did you notice how like the main solo was still being played and it was beautiful, but with it was the chaos? Like I said, it's multiple solos being played at the same time. You almost think that Yoshiki's an octopus, the way that he's able to play both pieces on top of each other, and where the brain is allowing him to actually play this. And I'm not exaggerating. It's just so chaotic that I don't know how he's able to do both parts at the same time. My brain won't allow me to do that.
Right. Yeah. I'm very curious how this comes across live. I'm going to assume in the studio he probably did the parts separately, but I mean, I'm not going to claim that I know that for a fact. But yeah, like it's definitely done for effect to make you feel like disheveled and chaotic, and it works. I am not sure if it needs to go on as long as it does. Like I feel like it's almost like I get what they're going for, but like I got the point. Like after the first couple of minutes of just this, like it's just very. I mean, I'm trying to like work, and I'm listening to like this absolute like Beethoven loses his mind. Like it's wild.
It doesn't bother me, and I'm going to say that because every time I listen to it, I pick up on different elements that I'd never heard the time previously, both on the beauty and the beast side, right? Like just
Sure.
the most beautiful parts and the most chaotic things. I think it's brilliant. I think there's a brilliance there.
I'll say this, that like when you come out of this haze, if you will, it wouldn't be as like triumphant if you didn't go through this whole process, this whole period. I think that's really kind of what the art form is. It's like this is the chaos in his mind, and he's trying to like work his way through all of this negativity and chaos, and potentially, if this is based on him feeling suicidal, my understanding is that like he was feeling very suicidal after his father had passed away when he wrote the song. So like this really, you can really just kind of think of this as just the human mind, just at its lowest point, and just not knowing whether
to continue.
Yeah, and that, how you said that, like the main solo still is playing in the background the whole time. I feel like that's the hope, like that reality is still there,
which he never loses sight of, despite all this ancillary stuff that's dragging him into insanity, for lack of a better word.
Even right now, it starts to like quiet down a little bit, but there's just that weird like dissonant high piano. It's like
in the background.
Yeah, like all right, I'm getting it back together. And nope, there's still a little bit of that chaos going on. It's still there. Like keep at it.
I'd argue that there's very few songs that take you on a journey like this section, and it's only done with one instrument, which is the most amazing thing. You don't need drums, you don't need guitar, and even the vocals, you don't need it, and yet it tells or kind of takes the listener on a journey in 8 minutes without saying or a word or adding any no orchestration, nothing. It's just the piano. It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's really amazing. To me, like the piano is the most amazing instrument of all the instruments, and they say that if you can learn how to play the piano, you can learn how to play any instrument. I kind of wish that I had at some point. It's such a, to me, like so much music that I enjoy really revolves around keyboards and piano, and we always are harping on how bands that have prominent keyboards and pianos that don't have them on like live really takes away from the experience, because it's such an important part of the music. I mean, can you imagine like going to see this song played live and like, yeah, we'll just pipe in the keyboards.
I was going to say, I can't think of a worse example of a song. I mean, I complain about Sabaton losing the keyboards at this point. I don't care if Sabaton ever has keys again. Don't take the keys out of X Japan. I mean, it is such, and it was a huge element on Blue Bloods as well. And I don't even know their entire discography. But what I do know is the first time I heard this song, I was immediately hooked. And I played it quite frequently, and to this day, it's in my rotation. I don't play it as much as some other things, but I go back to this quite a bit. So to kind of do a deep dive on it this week was not that difficult for me, because I know the song pretty well for a 29-minute album.
Yeah, well said. I'm just kind of like reading some of the facts about the album. Funny, just an interesting thing. The cover art was made using an actual X-ray of Yoshiki's skull, and that he had trouble getting it done because the hospitals refused to take the X-ray without a medical condition to justify him giving himself radiation. So
I think the insanity or the mental illness might be enough to take the X-ray. But that being said, we're 23.
Yeah, he should have been like, "Did you listen to this song?"
we're 23 minutes and about 30 seconds or so into the song. A change of seasons has just ended. If you're playing that in the background. And yet this song is now finally getting into that final gear and about to take off for another.
The orchestra's back.
Yes,
now,
and I was going to say, and that's how it kind of kicks off into that top gear. The orchestra is back, and right now it's just a classical track, but like the most beautiful modern classical piece you'll ever hear. And then all of a sudden, after this crescendo, the band is back, and it's like, don't forget about us. You know, we're here too, and this thing just ends so gracefully. But we'll get there. This album sold exceptionally well. It was the 28th best-selling album, I guess, in Japan that year. It sold over 500,000 copies, and here we go. The drums and the key and the guitars are back, and we're off to finish this thing.
Just in case you forgot, you were listening to a metal band.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting is when this band was at its heyday, like on this tour, they're selling out the Tokyo Dome, and as we know, everything is better in the Tokyo Dome, and this is no different. But they're playing in front of tens and tens of thousands of people. And even though they didn't record 1,000 albums after this, and even though they didn't, and they had a bunch of lineup changes and everything else, the band stayed as popular as ever, not just in Japan, but again, around the world.
It's again, like, that blows me away because what is the prerequisite to blow up as a metal band? There's no other band that sounds like this, that has this kind of fame, in my opinion.
And here we get into the lyrical section where he says, "I was in chains of memory, half blinded, losing my heart, walking in the sea of dreams." But again, he's saying that in the past tense because he's now out of that despair and has essentially a new lease on life. And it's really nice to see him kind of pull the nose up and get out of this, this kamikaze mission that he was on.
There's an interesting fact that I'm seeing here that there was an unreleased album that the band had worked on for like 10 years and just never came to fruition. And it was meant to be half new songs and half re-recordings of old songs, and then it changed to just just new songs. But the plan was initially to re-record a new version of this, which is kind of crazy that you would take something that's so perfect for what it is, and like you said, it's a 20 plus 30 plus year old song that still sounds fantastic. Like, I would argue it really doesn't need to be re-recorded, remastered, remixed, whatever. It's
no,
really
I wouldn't touch
quite
this
wonderful
thing.
The way it is.
I wouldn't touch it, and no matter what they came out with, I think it would be less than. And that's just not an insult. It's like, I wouldn't want to hear a Change of Seasons Part 2. I just don't. I'm just leave it the way it is and write another piece of music, and I'd be very happy.
Yeah.
We are almost at the 27-minute mark, so there's about 2 minutes left in this song, and it just continues to build. And right now, it's
it reminds me a lot of like Holy Land Angra, like just the orchestrations with that fast electric guitar side by side. Of course the song's going to end epically. Like everything else it's done so far has been epic, so the end is going to be just as epic.
Did you notice how the album was released on Atlantic Records? I thought that was really interesting because I think it's just a testament to how strong the band was at the time. And if you go back to Atlantic Records in 1993, you're talking Sabotage, you're talking like some real heavy hitters.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that, so I'm glad you mentioned it. As soon as you said Atlantic, Sabotage was the first band that pops into my head, honestly.
And I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, Yoshiki actually bought a recording studio in Hollywood, and that is where nearly all of the recordings would take place. And Atlantic Records, I should note, that was after they had been on Sony, so they were getting pushed to the moon on both labels that they were on. And by this point, metal was kind of getting phased out of the mainstream. Obviously, alt rock had taken over, but this still sold very well for a metal album.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, did you mention the numbers before? Like I think there's a lot of bands that would kill for that kind of movement with their albums for sure. What is the future of this band? I know they released a single last year, but like, will they ever make another album? What do you think?
I don't know. And with the death of the bass player, I don't know if they're done. I would love to see them again. Like I said, that was a transformative concert to me. Not just the music, but visually, it was unbelievable. And I remember when I found out that they were playing, it was kind of a no-brainer to go. And at the time, I knew 2 of their songs. I knew Art of Life, which has just come to an end after 29 minutes. And I knew the song that Damnation Angels had covered. So I don't even know that I had heard the original at that point. And that was the extent of my knowledge. But I'm like, I just want to see what this is. And it was awesome. It was a show that I'll never forget. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And in my favorite room in the world, right? Like Madison Square Garden, where I've had the pleasure of being countless times at this point with, St. John's basketball games and Rangers games and this, that, and the other thing. But I've been in that building so many times, I never saw anything like this. And I saw Maiden there. I saw Dream Theater there. I saw Dio there. I saw so many artists in that room. Pearl Jam. This was a unique show. And, just kind of putting a bow on the album. Did you have any other thoughts, or kind of what was the progression for you throughout the week as you listened to it before I asked you for a score?
It definitely like just came all together for me. The more and more I listened to it, and even just now, listening to it again and having the benefit of chatting with you about it while it was playing, it's just a really deep and a really just incredible piece of music that I think that if you're not familiar with it, I might even suggest that you just listen to it without our commentary first and just really take it in, and then maybe go back and listen to it again with our commentary, because I think you really need to like appreciate everything that's going on, and with us talking over it, you might not be able to. But I was really impressed by this, and then it really makes me want to kind of listen to more of their material, of which there isn't a ton of, which kind of makes it a lot less daunting than a lot of bands that I've gotten into way too late. So, I mean, we've now covered 2 of their albums, and they only have 5. So,
we'll have to cover the other 3 then. What is your score on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm going to give this an 8.5, just on the sheer fact that it's just such an extraordinary feat. I think. I just think it's a really, really incredible. I love all of the musicianship. I love the vocals. I think that while I understand the art form of just that chaotic piano solo, I feel like it goes on just a little bit long, but I get that it's there for a reason. But I just think this is really awesome, and I'm so glad that Adam requested it, because it was just like a really cool trip, and it gave us an excuse to do our first ever, listen along, which hopefully we'll have another opportunity to do something like this again in the future. But this was really cool.
Yeah, this was definitely the episode for something like that. I hope everyone enjoyed it. The reason I'm giving this score of a 9, which is a very high score, is because every time I listen to this song, this week being no exception, I like it more than I did the first time I heard it. And I really liked it the first time I heard it. It's just that every time I listen to it again or pay attention to it, I like it better and better. So it has never gotten stale. And I liked it when I first heard it. Like I said, it's just gone up and up and up. And I don't know that it's ever going to be a 10 for me. And I still think A Change of Seasons for me is a better song, but this is damn close. And a 9 is a really high score. So you have to put it up there with some of the all-time great albums. the 8-minute piano solo, which I can understand might take you out of it, to me just enhances the experience. And maybe it goes on a little bit too long, maybe it doesn't. But one could argue that when you're pulling yourself out of a suicidal depression, I think that you can go on for as long as you want. He pulled the nose up, and for me, I'm happy with it, if that makes any sense. So a 9 for me.
Like I said before, it makes that ending all the more triumphant. Like when it kicks back in, I think that if you cut that piano solo short, it doesn't make that ending feel as earned. So I get it. Like I'm kind of trying to balance my musical likings versus the artistic license, I guess.
Sure.
But I mean, this is as high as just about anything I've ever listened to, really for the first time, listened to heavily, and just was immediately drawn to in such a way. It's dense. Like a 30-minute song is dense, but it's interesting because a 30-minute album is short, but a 30-minute song is dense. So
yeah, it's amazing how that happens. But yeah, I look forward to doing more of this band, although obviously there's not a ton left. But thanks to Adam for the request. And I just want to mention one news item before we break for Prog Power, but that is the band Mayhem, the black metal masters that they are, have been around for 40 years now and are doing a bunch of, or I should say a handful of shows to celebrate their anniversary in North America. Now, this is a band I've never really gotten into. I've listened to them, and it's just hard for me to kind of appreciate their brand of black metal. I prefer an Emperor or somebody like that. But they're doing 6 shows across North America beginning in mid-November. What was interesting to me is that they're playing a show in New York City, except they're playing about 7 or 8 blocks from my old house where I grew up in Queens. So I'm tempted to go back home just to go watch this show. And they're a band that I've never seen live, but I know that a lot of black metal fans consider it to be just, some of the best in the absolute, in the genre. So if I don't see them at some point, I'm sure they'll be on 70K, and I'll catch them then.
There you go. I don't have much to add to that. It is a band that I'm woefully unaware of. So
there you go. But yeah, with that, we'll come back next week. We'll do our Prog Power recap after our little jaunt down to Atlanta, and then it'll be my turn. And I've got an album picked out, and I'll give a little hint. It is an anniversary album that I've had on the calendar for probably about a year and a half at this point, because it was something I wanted to cover, but I knew that the anniversary was coming up in this year, and I'll just say this, it's the 25th anniversary, so we'll go back to 1999 for this particular album, but I'll just leave it at that.
I have no idea what that can be, so I'm looking forward to the surprise. I actually toyed with having you tell me what we were going to listen to now, but you know what? Let's just wait, and when we have our Prog Power discussion, you can lower the boom, so to speak, and I should have enough time to listen to it and all that. But I
don't think it'll be completely foreign to you, but I don't think you'll know the whole thing. So let's just say this: 25th anniversary in a band we have not yet covered on the podcast. But I'll take any guesses on our Metal Exchanges Facebook page. Thanks to everyone again for being a Patreon member, and for everybody else, do consider joining. If not, please give us a like and a follow if you think we deserve it, and we will be back very, very soon as September rolls on here at the Metal Exchange.
Yep, and we'll be sure to gather for what I would like to become our annual Metal Exchange photo. We had one last year, which was, I believe it was Steven Schmidt, the photographer at Prog Power, I believe that's his name, was kind enough to take a very professional shot at all of us if we promised to get, or somebody at Center Stage just made us promise to take the picture and get the hell out of there, because we were sitting at the autograph table posing for this photo. But I was really taken aback at how many people showed up for the photo, and it's one of my favorite pictures. I have it on the digital frame that we have in our apartment, and every time it pops up, it makes me smile. So let's see if we can get it to even more people to show up for the photo. Probably it'll be at some point on Saturday, just like it was last year, but maybe we can try to get a little bit more notice to everyone instead of like an hour before, which I think is what we did last time. But
we'll plan accordingly this time.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see everybody. And like, if you have never actually like met us before, like, please don't hesitate to come up and say hello. Like, I've had people come up to me at Prog Power and just be like, "Hey, I know you. You're from that podcast," and like, I never felt so awesome by being recognized for that. That was really cool. So, and we've made so many cool friends through doing this podcast. So, I'm always happy to make more. So, looking forward to this immensely. And it's been a fun march through the summer to get us here. And we've done a lot of anniversary albums, and did a fan vote that Darkwater ran away with. So it's been a fun summer, and I have a few things in mind for the fall that I'm really excited about. So we carry on, but I always look forward to our Prog Power recap, which I will now be able to say that we can talk about day one this year. So.
Well said. I can't add anything to that. I just echo your sentiments, and look forward to jumping on with you again in just a little bit. So enjoy the evening, my friend. I will talk to you soon. Stay metal.
All right. Take care, buddy.